I said shut up and do as you're told. The slap cracked across the sterile air like a gunshot. Nurse Maya Williams stood frozen, one hand pressed to her cheek, the sting still blooming hot under her fingers. Around her, nurses and interns halted mid-step. The ER was silent, except for the arrogant huff of Dr. Alan Pierce towering over her. "Next time you question my orders in front of patients," he hissed, "you'll be out of this hospital before your shift ends. Got it?" Maya blinked, slowly lowering her hand. Her voice came out calm, quiet, almost too calm. "Dr. Pierce," she said evenly, "you just assaulted a staff member in front of witnesses." Alan smirked, straightening his white coat like a badge of power. "Assault? Don't be dramatic. I gave you a reminder of who's in charge here." From behind, one of the nurses, Kelly, whispered under her breath, "Oh my God," while another quickly turned away, pretending to check a monitor. Alan turned toward them sharply. "Everyone get back to work! I won't tolerate insubordination from anyone!" No one moved. Maya drew in a slow breath and stepped closer. "You told me to administer 30 milligrams of lorazepam to a patient already sedated on morphine," she said, her tone surgical, precise. "That dosage could have stopped his breathing." Alan's jaw tightened. "I'm the doctor here, not you. And I'm the nurse who just saved that man's life," Maya replied, her voice steady. A ripple of murmurs spread through the room. Alan's nostrils flared. "You think you can embarrass me in front of my team? You're finished here. Security!" Two guards at the door looked uncertain, glancing between the doctor and the nurse. Maya didn't move. "Go ahead," she said softly. "Call them." Alan hesitated. For the first time, there was a flicker of unease in his eyes, something about the way she stood there, unflinching. Moments later, a tall, broad-shouldered man entered, Security Chief Davis. "What's going on?" he asked, his tone firm. Alan gestured at Maya. "This nurse is insubordinate. She's refusing orders and disrupting the ER." Davis glanced at Maya, then at the staff behind her, all silent, but their faces said everything. He crossed his arms. "Is that true, Miss Williams?" "No, sir," she replied. "Dr. Pierce endangered a patient and assaulted me when I corrected him." The air thickened. Davis frowned. "Assault?" Alan scoffed. "Please, you're not really taking her word over mine, are you? You know how these people—" The last two words slipped out before he could stop them. The entire room froze. Kelly's eyes widened. Another nurse, Jamal, muttered, "You've got to be kidding me." Maya's voice broke the silence like ice cracking underfoot. "These people, doctor?" Alan's face went red. "I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did." Maya's tone was still soft, but it carried a quiet authority that made even Davis straighten his back. "You've made your point clear." She turned to Davis. "I'd like this incident documented, fully." Davis nodded. "I'll handle it personally." But Alan wasn't done. "You'll regret this," he spat. "I have friends on the hospital board. You think your little report scares me?" Maya tilted her head slightly, eyes calm but unreadable. "You'd be surprised who's reading those reports, doctor." Alan barked a laugh. "Oh, please. You're a nurse, a temporary hire, probably. You're lucky to even be in this hospital." Maya didn't reply. Instead, she turned and walked toward the hallway. Her calm steps echoed softly against the tile. Before she disappeared through the double doors, she said over her shoulder, "You might want to check your messages, Dr. Pierce." He frowned but said nothing. Minutes later, a voice came over the hospital intercom. "Dr. Pierce, please report to conference room 3B immediately." The color drained from his face. Kelly looked at the others. "Wait, isn't that the boardroom?" Alan tried to compose himself. "Probably just a formality. HR nonsense." He straightened his coat and marched down the hall. When he pushed open the door to the boardroom, his confidence faltered. Inside sat the entire hospital board, and at the head of the table was a man he'd only ever seen during formal events. Director Charles Williams. Charles's face was unreadable, his hands folded neatly on the table. "Dr. Pierce," he said quietly, "take a seat." Alan swallowed. "Sir, I—" "Sit," the director repeated. Alan sat. Charles leaned forward. Do you know why you're here? I assume there's been some misunderstanding, a minor incident blown out of proportion by my daughter? Charles' voice cut through him like a blade. Alan froze. Daughter? Charles opened a folder and slid it across the table. Inside were photos, clear as day, of the slap, the stunned staff, and Maya's hand pressed against her cheek. The timestamp read just 15 minutes ago. We have surveillance in every wing, Charles said, and a security report filed by Davis. I also have witness statements. Would you like to change your story before I forward this to the state medical board? Alan's lips parted, but no words came out. Sweat began to form on his temples. I didn't know that she was my daughter, Charles finished, or that she was a human being who didn't deserve to be humiliated in front of her colleagues. Alan's hands trembled slightly. Sir, I made a mistake. No, Charles said coldly. You made a choice. The words hung in the air like a sentence. Charles stood towering over him. You will submit a formal resignation before you leave this building. Your license will be reviewed by the board. Security will escort you out. Alan shot up from his seat. This isn't fair. You can't... Charles's voice thundered, calm but absolute. Fair is what my daughter gave you when she didn't press charges the moment you laid hands on her. Don't test my definition of mercy. Alan's shoulders slumped. He turned toward the door, his voice barely audible. I didn't mean to... But Charles wasn't listening. He was already dialing a number on his phone. Yes, he said to whoever answered. Activate internal audit. Protocol on all staff conduct records for the last 12 months. I want full transparency. Alan stopped mid-step, his face pale. Wait, what are you doing? He asked weakly. Charles looked up at him. Finding out how many others you've treated the same way. The doctor froze. For the first time, genuine fear flickered across his features. Outside, Maya stood by the corridor window, watching as her father's office door closed behind the disgraced doctor. Her reflection stared back at her, calm, composed, and powerful. But as she turned to leave, her phone buzzed. A message appeared from an unknown number. You made a mistake exposing him. You don't know who you're dealing with. She stared at the screen, her heartbeat quickening. And then 3 dots appeared. Whoever it was still typing. The phone buzzed again. He wasn't working alone. But what do you think? Who else in the hospital was helping? Dr. Pierce cover his tracks? Drop your answers in the comments below. Who wasn't working alone? Maya whispered, staring at the message glowing on her phone screen. Her reflection on the glass window looked calm, but her heart was pounding. She typed back quickly. Who is this? No reply. Just those 3 dots blinking again. And then nothing. Maya's father, Director Charles Williams, stepped out of his office just then. His face was composed, but his tone was all business. It's done, he said simply. Dr. Pierce is gone. Maya nodded. Good. She tucked her phone into her scrubs, trying to mask her unease. Charles noticed. Something wrong? She hesitated. Someone just texted me. Said Pierce wasn't working alone. Charles frowned. Let me see. She handed him the phone. He read the message, his expression darkening. That number's unlisted. Probably a burner phone. We'll have IT trace it through the hospital's network logs. Dad, Maya said quietly. What if it's true? What if there's someone else? Charles met her eyes. Then we'll find them. The next morning, whispers ran through the hospital like wildfire. Everyone knew Dr. Pierce had been terminated, but no one knew the full story. Some said he'd assaulted a nurse, others claimed he'd stolen research data. Maya kept her head down and focused on her patients. Still, she could feel the stares. Pity from some, resentment from others. But there was one pair of eyes she couldn't ignore. Dr. Karen Stokes, the new interim chief physician. Dr. Stokes was known for being sharp, calculating, and fiercely loyal to hospital politics. She smiled too much, talked too little, and always seemed to know more than she let on. Maya, she said one afternoon, approaching her near the nurse's station. I just wanted to say I admire how you handled yourself yesterday. Very brave. Thank you, Doctor, Maya said cautiously. But, Stokes continued, her tone shifting subtly, you should be careful. Stirring up drama can make people uncomfortable. You don't want to become known as that nurse, do you? Maya blinked. The nurse who stands up for herself? Dr. Stokes's smile tightened. The nurse who attracts attention, the kind that disrupts order. And with that, she turned and walked away, heels clicking like a metronome of warning. Later that evening, Maya went to check on her father in his office. Papers were spread across his desk. Internal reports, security memos, HR statements. I don't like this, Charles muttered, tapping a page. We pulled activity logs from the pharmacy system. Pierce wasn't the only one authorizing illegal medication transfers. Someone else signed off on 3 of them. Who? Maya asked. He turned the page around. The name at the bottom made her stomach twist. Dr. Karen Stokes. Charles looked up. She tried to delete the entries, but IT restored them. She's been falsifying dosage logs for months, likely covering for Pierce's malpractice. Maya's mind raced. So she knew. She protected him. Charles nodded grimly. And if she's warning you now, she's afraid you'll expose her too. Maya sat back, realization dawning. That text message, it must have been from someone in her circle. A warning. Charles stood. No, it was a threat. 2 days later, the hospital board called an emergency meeting. Maya attended at her father's request, though she felt the weight of every stare as she entered the conference room. Dr. Stokes sat near the head of the table, calm as ever, her white coat crisp, her nails perfectly manicured. Charles began, As director, it's my responsibility to ensure this institution remains ethical and accountable. Recent investigations revealed multiple violations, falsified medication logs, forged authorization signatures, and patient endangerment. He turned to the large screen behind him. These are internal records restored from the hospital database. Dr. Stokes's face twitched as her name appeared on several of the files. This is outrageous, she snapped. Those records were doctored. Charles didn't flinch. They were, by you. A hush fell over the room. Maya stood. Dr. Stokes, she said softly, when you told me to stay quiet, was that before or after you started covering for Pierce's negligence? Karen's eyes narrowed. Watch your tone, nurse. No, Maya said firmly. You watch yours. Because this time, you're not talking to someone you can intimidate. The room seemed to tilt. Even the board members exchanged uneasy glances. Charles spoke again. Dr. Stokes, your privileges are revoked effective immediately. Security will escort you out. Karen shot to her feet, fury flashing across her face. You can't do this. I built this program. I made this hospital what it is. Charles looked her dead in the eye. Then it's time for someone better to take over. Karen's gaze flicked between him and Maya. You think you've won? This isn't over. She stormed out, shoving past security. That evening, the hospital was quieter than usual. Maya finished her rounds and sat in the empty break room, sipping stale coffee. For the first time in days, she let herself breathe. Her father walked in, carrying 2 paper cups. You look like you need something stronger than caffeine. She smiled faintly. You have no idea. He sat across from her. You handled yourself well today. I learned from you, she said softly. Charles chuckled. I'm proud of you. Maya, you didn't just stand up for yourself. You stood up for what's right. She hesitated, then said, Dad, if you hadn't been the director, I would have lost my job. Maybe worse. He nodded. Maybe. But the truth has power, Maya, and you gave it a voice. They sat in silence for a moment. The hum of fluorescent lights filled the space. Then her phone buzzed again. A text. You think it's over? Check the lab inventory. Maya's chest tightened. She stood abruptly. Dad! But he was already on his feet. They hurried to the lab together. When they arrived, the door was ajar, the lights flickering. Inside, the chemical cabinet had been left wide open. Empty vials and scattered paperwork covered the floor. Charles scanned the room. What the hell happened here? Maya knelt, picking up one of the discarded files. Her eyes widened. These are controlled substances logs. Someone's been stealing from the lab for months. And then she saw it, scribbled on the corner of a clipboard, half burned in the trash bin. KS, deliver to storage. Same account as Pierce. Maya's blood ran cold. She wasn't just covering for him, Dad. She was running the operation. Charles's jaw clenched. Then it's time to call the authorities. This ends now. He took out his phone. But before he could dial, the lights went out. The emergency backup kicked in a second later. Dim red lights glowing through the lab. From the hallway, footsteps echoed. Slow, measured, getting closer. Charles whispered, "Stay behind me." The door creaked open. But instead of Karen Stokes, two uniformed agents stepped inside, flashing badges. "FBI," one of them said. "We've been monitoring this facility for weeks. You must be Director Williams." Charles exhaled slowly. "Yes, what's going on?" The agent looked between them. "We've got reason to believe Dr. Stokes has been laundering stolen medical inventory through a private network. We need your cooperation." Maya swallowed hard. "You'll have it." The agent nodded. "Good, because she's on the run, and we have intel she's not leaving town alone." Maya froze. "What do you mean?" The agent's eyes met hers. "She has help from someone still inside this hospital." Life lesson. When you stand for truth, the fight doesn't end when you expose a liar. It ends when you refuse to become silent again. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's calm, steady, and unshakable, just like Maya. Question for you. If you were in Maya's shoes, would you have spoken up? Even if it meant risking everything? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories that remind us why truth and dignity always win in the end.